Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. Today we're doing Maseches Nazir, Daf It, number 29. A great share for you today. Of course, I'm dressed a little nicer today than I've usually done over the winter over here. It's getting a little warmer over here, so I don't need to wear a sweater anymore. So I got the suit back. You know, listen, really I should be wearing a suit every day because your wardrobe has to match the authenticity of your shear, the value and level of your shear. And of course, my shear is top in the world. It is the top by far. I was listening to a different shear. I'm not going to mention the Maggid shear. His name wasn't Stefanski. It was some other Maggid shear, popular one on the Daf Yomi app or whatever they have. It's only audio, obviously. My father listens to this person, and I'm listening to his shear, and I'm like, not only is the guy extremely slow, he's a rabbi, I guess. He's not only extremely slow in delivering his shir, he's not even as accurate. I don't know if he uses R scroll or not, but his explanations weren't even as accurate as the explanations I give, which are predominantly from the R scroll. He didn't understand the Gemara properly, and it's very sad. And he goes on these tangents about arcane facts, bores you with them. His shir was 45 minutes. Yesterday, my shir was 20 minutes around. So it's less than half the time. Not entertaining. He talked about a woman shaving her hair and didn't talk about Hasidic women shaving their hairs. I mean, you gotta be in contemporary nowadays. So you don't have to be contemporary. You have to, make it relevant for people. Um, Boring as anything. I don't know why people are not. The whole world is listening to my shear, but this matches the value of my shear. A nice Ralph Lauren jacket, a Tommy Hilfiger tie, so Brooks Brothers shirt. So obviously high value clothing, high value person. It's true. The person's wearing expensive clothes. That means they value themselves, and there's more value to the person. That's just the way it is. All right, you have rich people that don't wear nice clothes. They're low value people because they don't dress themselves nicely. So it's sad. All right, let's start from the bottom. The Gemara, three lines from the bottom. Chav Ches Hamad Beis. We had a Mishnah which talks about a father can make his son a Nazir, but not his daughter, and a mother can't make her son or daughter either. As far as the ish in avalisha lo, only a man can make his son a Nazir. A woman cannot. My time on. Rabbi Yochanan Amar halachi. It's halacha Moshe Sinai. Technically, maybe a woman should be halacha Moshe Sinai. Only a man. Halachi ben Nazir. Yosef Rechanina Amar Reish Lakish. Name of Reish Lakish. Kedei lechancho tapuch of teram and aleph. Kedei lechancho b'mitzvos. It's mitzvah of chinuch. I mentioned Nazir could be a mitzvah. Stam Nazir's 30 days could be a mitzvah. Just like other mitzvahs, the father has to teach his child to do the mitzvah. Here also, he's teaching him by enforcing a Nazirus on his son. He's teaching him about the mitzvah of Nazir. Ihachi, afil isha nami. Shouldn't the mother also be able to make a son a Nazir? She also has to mechanech her children. Kasavar ish chayav lechanech b'no mitzvahs and isha chayav lechanech b'no. The mitzvah of chinuch is on the father. The mitzvah of chinuch is not on the mother. The Gemara in Sukkah on Daf It, which seems to indicate that Hilni Amalka was mechaneches her children. There's a bit of a question. Akiva Eger asked this question in Masechah Sukkah. Check it out over there. The simple answer to that question, right, is that even though it seems from that that incident, the question was over there whether they're doing averas over there. They're singing outside the sukkah. The children singing outside the sukkah. That's not called chinuch. We're going to learn today, especially Ian Ben Sion, there's a difference between a mitzvah and averas under the age of 13, under the age of 12 for a girl. Even though children under the age of bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah are not obligated in mitzvahs, positive mitzvahs, they are forbidden in lavim. And eating outside of sukkah, right outside of sukkah, is a bittul of a mitzvah's essay. So it's a mitzvah. It's a lav. Lava bam chal essay is an essay, but it's really a lav. It's a forbidden thing. They can't do isurim. There's an isur eats outside of sukkah. So therefore, the mother is obligated because the child are violating. They violate Isra Del Raisa. I'm going to prove this in Ian Ben Sion. We'll talk more about this in Ian Ben Sion. But here's talking about isur. Here's talking about a mitzvah. So. Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan, where says the Amar Halachi ben Nazir, Amatu Lahachi beno in Bitolo. According to Rabbi Yochanan, who says it's Halacha Mishina by Nazir, so therefore he can accept the Naziris for his son, but for his daughter, no. That was the Lachman Sinai. Hashem said it in this regard. You have no right to question it. El Rish Lakish, Afilu Bito. Why can't he also? He has presumably an obligation to teach his daughter about mitzvahs. Rish Lakish held there's a mitzvah. Teach your son to do mitzvahs, positive mitzvahs, not teach your daughter. Bishal Rabbi Yochanan Amar Alachi ben Nazir, who says Allah by Nazir, Ahachi ben Naziros in a Darim lo, right? That's where Hashem said Lachman Sinai. It only is by Naziros, so you can't accept the Darim on your son. El Rish Lakish, Afilu Nadarim Nami. Why can't a man accept the Darim? Is a type of Naziros is a type of neder. Any neder, he can accept that his son shouldn't eat meat. So then, let me buy him in Darim the last lane evil, right? If his son, he says his son shouldn't go ahead and eat cheese. I don't know. It's not disgusting not to eat cheese. I feel Naziros, the Islam evil, right? By forbidding him from drinking wine and growing your hair long, it makes you kind of disgusting. And still, the father has the ability to do it to his son. Right? So technically, he would admit Naziros is the chiddush, right? Because it's degrading and it's disgusting for the son to do this. Nonetheless, the father has the capability of doing this because of the mitzvah of chinuch. So even my nedarim, certainly, where not every neder is disgusting or degrading for the son, he can do it. Mishnah Rabbi Yochanan Damar Halachi ben Nazir. If the child protests or the relatives protest, they don't want to do Nazir, it works. That's Halacha Mishnah. Elder Yossi Rechanina Amareish Lakish called Kmineo and Krovim Damrin and Lay Lotim mitzvahs. If it's a mitzvah, right? Presumably, like we suggested, sometimes it is a mitzvah to become a Nazir. How could the relatives or himself protest that he doesn't want to do a mitzvah? Can't teach him mitzvahs. So, Rish Lakish obviously held this is obviously a mitzvah which is not so important to teach your son because a lot of times the Nazir is a bad thing, it's an avera. It could be potentially a good thing. A lot of times it's a avera, so it's not so important. So therefore, if he protests, the relatives would protest, the father would also waive. We assume he would waive his ability to teach his son mitzvahs. Therefore, at the end of the Nazirus, his son could shave his head and do hakafa. Now, hakafa is normally a problem. Hakafa is basically shaving your head, and hakafas harosh, you have to keep peos harosh over here. These have to be there. When you shave your entire head, you cut these off. And that's a violation of Isra Deraisa, Sakifu Pas Roshkam. You can't do that. Right? So it's Salachon Sinai that overrides that's the Mido Raisa, he could do it. So overrides the Isra Deraisa. El Yosef Rechanina, Amar Ishlakish Den Chango Mitzvahs, Hakavid Hakafa. He's doing Hakafa. Now the Gemara is assuming Chinuch Mitzvahs is only the Rabbanan, and Hakafa is an Isra Deraisa. Right? So the obvious question is over here. What do you mean? It's a katan. Hakafas of his head, right, is only the Rabbanan. He just like he's chayav to do mitzvahs estay midrabbanan chino. Also midrabbanan. The losa say should be midrabbanan. The answer obviously is the article says a different explanation. The article says, how could Chazal say such a thing where when he's going to become a gadol we issue d'oraisa? But the simple explanation is that kafa is d'oraisa. Like we're saying over here, I will explain more in Ian Ben Sion what I believe truly that a katan, and it's proven from various gemaras, he is midoraisa even before he's bar mitzvah. He's not allowed to do averos d'oraisa. Averos midoraisa. He's already mitzuva as a katan. I'll explain that more, the logic behind it, and proofs for that in Ian Ben Sion. You're not going to want to miss that. It's very important share. So what would he say to this? At the end of Nazirus, not only do you shave the payos, right? Some people they do like extreme fade, you know. I don't know what it's called when you just cut off the payos and you leave the top, but crew cut or whatever. But if you shave the entire head, there's an opinion. Some machlokas we'll see later on in the Masechta. That's only derabbanan, right? If you just cut off the payos, that's doraisa. If you shave the whole head together with the payos, that's only the rabbanan. The chinuch with the rabbanan. Chinuch obviously is the rabbanan. Mechasi chinuch the rabbanan v'daki hakafa the rabbanan. The rabbanan can push away, and it's the rabbanan. It's like esay dochalo save the raisa, esay dochalo save the rabbanan. Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan, damar halachi ben Nazir, tzalach moshutzina hachim megalech ma'isi korban. That's why it's the raisa. And the zero, so the son is the raisa. He brings a korban at the end because it's in zero the raisa. El Rabbi Yosef Rechanina, Amar Ishlakish the chanukah with mitzvah. It's only the rabbanan. How come ma'isi chul nazara, right? Technically, you can't bring korbanos. Midoraisa is known as zeros over. It's only the rabbanan mitzvah of chinuch. So therefore, when you're makdish the animal, the three animals you bring at the conclusion of the Naziris, there's no kedusha. So you bring chul nazara midoraisa. Kasavar chul nazara lav doraisa. So he holds machlokas and mizachas kedushin, other places, whether chul nazara is an isra doraisa, is derabbanan. Bringing chulin, unconsecrated animals into the azara and shacking them is only derabbanan. Bishlam al Rabbi Yochanan Amar Lachi ben Nazir Ahachi Kimitma Maisi Karban Sipar. If it becomes tummy in the middle of his Nazirus, so you bring a korban, right? You bring two birds, one for Chatas, one for Olav, Achal Kohen, and the Kohen eats it, Malika. You can eat it because Malika, because it has Kedusha. It's a Nazirus Del Rice, it has Kedusha. We'll discuss exactly how it is Nazirus Del Rice. The father accepted for his son, it's the son's Nazirus. Why is it Del Rice? But we'll explain, I have to explain the Lachashusina more in the coming days. But the Gemara is doing its Del Raisa, so therefore the Karbanos, when he becomes Tamei, are Del Raisa. And therefore the Kohen could eat it. Malika, birds, they're not shechted. They're do Malika. The Kohen takes his thumbnail and pierces the back of the bird's head and the back of the neck and kills it like that. Normally, birds or animals you can only eat with shchita. This is not shchita. Shchita you do with a knife, and it has to be done, cutting the kana and veshet. Here he's doing a different means of killing it. It should normally be nevela, and nevela is also for any Jew to eat, including a Kohen to eat. So how could the Kohen eat it? So if it's del rice, there's halacha. If it's del rice, if I kosher malika, it's a special halacha that even though it's nevela generally, in the case of karbanos, is allowed. El the real Chanina Amrei Shlakish hakachol nevela, who holds that midal raisa there's no nazirus over here. So on the raisa level it's nevela. How could he eat it? So the answer is Kasava Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Dein Shchita L'Of Min Torah. Birds. The concept of nevela by birds is only the Rabbana. You only midaraisa only have to shech the animals, behemos. But ophos, you don't have to shech only the Rabbana. You have to shech the birds. The chulin b'azara will have the raisa, and the problem of bringing unconsecrated birds into the azara again, he holds is only the Rabbana, so it's not a problem. So Rabbi Yossi hachi, does Rabbi Yossi really hold this that it's only shchita for birds is the Rabbana? Rabbi Yossi Yehuda Omer minan lechatas ha'of shibal asafek. Chatas ha'of is talking about a case. As we mentioned before, you bring a pair of birds for a yoledes, a woman who gives birth, and a woman who's a zava. She's a zava. After she completes 7 days of tara, she saw a mission of blood 3 times, 3 days in a row. So she brings a chatas off and also a pair of birds. Now, let's say she's unsure if she gave birth. She has a fetus, it was a miscarriage. She's not sure if she gave birth, it's suffix. Or she's not sure if she's a zava, but she saw 3 emissions, not sure. So you bring a chatas off al suffix. You bring the pair of birds al suffix. Right, so now we're going to discuss that. It comes in on suffix. However, even though it's brought, even though korban chatas is usually eaten by the kohanim, here it's not an Eden. Talmud Lomar, where does the brisa prove from? A zav et zovo l'zachar nekeva. It talks about a zav for a zachar nekeva. Compares makish nekeva l'zachar. It compares a nekeva to a zachar. Ma zachar maybe korban alavada. Just like a zachar would bring a korban if he's a zav. Right, they'll bring korbanos also. Af nekeva maybe a korban alavada. So to nekeva, if she's a vaday zav or vaday yolesh, she brings karbanos. So ma zachar maybe al safek. Just like a zachar bring al safek. Now a zachar does not bring al safek if he's a zav, right? If he's a zav, he doesn't bring a safek. He brings al safek asham toloi. The Gemara is referring to. If he's a safek, he did it in avera. Let's say in machal shabbos b'shogi. He's not sure if he did that. He's talking or mesubik v'yik chaylev, right? So you bring an asham toloi, which is a ram happens. So after nekeva maybe al safek. So we learn from this hekesh that in nekeva, even though not by asham, even though she also bring an asham toloi, but an additional chiddush, right? The fact that they brought them together teaches me something new. So it teaches me an akeva happens to be that even if she's a suffix, whether she's a zava or suffix yoledes, she brings these birds. Uma zachar minshu maybe al maybe al suffix. Just like a zachar, right? What he brings on a vadai, if he vadai committed an avera, he brings an animal. Also by a suffix, Hashem Toli brings an animal. After Keva Minshi Mevial Avada, Mevial Safek. If she's a Vada Yoledes, Vada Zava, she brings a bird. So to a Safek, she brings a bird. So that we established from this Gezerah, from this Hekish, that she brings a Chatas Of al Safek. Ima Zachar, maybe the Brisa continues. So we're going to see that it's not eaten. Ima Zachar maybe Korban Menecha, right? If he brings an Hashem Toli is eaten by the Kohanim. After Keva Mevia Korban Menecha, she also should bring a Chatas Of al Safek and should be eaten. Amart lo, you say no. You say no, that's not true. Top of Chav Teram Abay is Imamar B'Zachar Shken Isra Echad. The reason over there is by Hashem Tola, he only did one Avera potentially. Tomar B'Nekeva Shnei Yisurin. Right, Hashem Tola, the only suffix, right? If he didn't actually do the Avera, he wasn't Mechal Shabbos, he didn't Chalev. So the possibility is he's bringing Chul Nazara, which is one of the Yisurim. Here there's two Yisurim. My birds, there's two Yisurim, right? Because there's Chul Nazar, and also there's Malika, which if it's not a real korban, it's not chayiv in a korban, it's nevela, right? So Shnei Yisurim. So you see Shnei Yisurim. The Gemara is assuming Shnei Yisurim Dal Raisa. So you see that there is a concept of shechita of ovos min Torah from this brisa, and it's in this Dal Raisa in nevela. Lav Israel nevela Chul Nazar. Aren't we talking about the two Yisurim of nevela and Chul Nazar? So you see that Rav Yossi Bar Yehuda actually holds shechita min of is min Torah. The Gemara is maskiv la Racha B'rei Ravika Racha B'rei Ravika. He throws away this proof. Maybe the Bryce didn't mean Daraisa. It just means your chayav. It looks like two Yisurim, but it's really only Darabanan. So that's the way of throwing away that proof. The Gemara says, "Lema ketanai." Say it's a machlokes tanayim. The machlokes Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, whether the fact that his father can accept Nazirus for his son is that Daraisa, is that halakha Moshe Sinai, or is it mitzvah of chinuch? Lema ketanai. Say it's a machlokes tanayim. And Masai Medir is beno ben Nazir. Until what age could a father accept Nazirus for his son? Until he actually becomes an adult. He's 13 years and he has 2 saros, which makes him an adult, third bar mitzvah boy. No, until he comes to the age of onus adarim, which is basically, you need 2 things. Basically, for a boy, you're 12 years old, and you also know who you're making an adarim. You know about the concept of Hashem. And for girls, it's also 1 year before the bat mitzvah, 11 years old, and she knows she's making an adarim too. So once he gets to that age, he gets to the age of 12, and he knows he's making a darim to Hashem, the father can no longer accept the Nazirus for his son. My laugh tonight. That's machlokes tanai. Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish is the same machlokes. It's Rabbi Savar halacha he, but not he also Rabbi Yochanan. It's halacha mishtinim. Afagav digil and darim. Even though he got to the point where he can make his own darim, his own Nazirus, right? And technically, when you get to the point where you can make your own Nazirus, right? So therefore, you shouldn't be in the rishus of your father anymore. Right? So nonetheless, nonetheless, since the Lachon Sinai, and it's Dalraisa, right? According to Reish Lakish, it's Daraban. According to Yochanan, it's Dalraisa. So therefore, Dalraisa, Lachon Sinai, it tells me, even though normally he shouldn't have koach over his son once he gets to the Onas Nadarim, here he does, and he can do it until he gets bar mitzvah. He says until you get to the Onas Nadarim, Sabra Kedei Lachan Kol Mitzvah, it's Darabana. And therefore, once he gets to the point where he can make his own Nazirus, therefore, the father has no rights to make an Nazirus for his son. Came on the Nafik Mershu says, Sulo Mechayev. He can no longer Mechayev his son. Amri, where it says Lo, the Chuli Alma, everyone agrees halacha, like Rabbi Yochanan. Maybe both Rebbe and Rabbi Yehuda both agree with Rabbi Yochanan, the Nazir. Here they're talking about this type of child, a 12-year-old child. Mufla Samach Lish refers to a child who Gil Onas and Adar. He's mufla. He knows how he has the koch of hafla of making a darim. He's samach lish. He's close to being a man. He's 12 years old, not 13 years old. Coming like a Rebbe sar mufla samach lish the concept we learn, and the Gemara in Erechon, I believe, says it, that we know the concept of mufla samach lish. Ish kiyaf. There's an extra pasuk. Ish kiyaf lelinder neder. So mufla samach lish the rabbanon. That drasha is only the rabbanon. Ask you the Raisa dachir the rabbanon. So even though technically midarabanan onas nadarim he can make nadarim. That's only the Rabbanan, and therefore, Midoraisa, the father has power to do it. Rabbi Yosef, Yehuda, Savran, Mufal, Samalish, Daraisa, he holds Daraisa. And since it's Daraisa, the Lachal Moshe Hussein, it wasn't said in that case. Meaning, maybe the Lachal Moshe Hussein was only said when it's Rabbanan, not when it's Daraisa. He's not in the rishus of the father to make Nazirus. The father can't make him a Nazir because he can make himself a Nazir. Levi is saying a different approach. The Chuli Alma Kedei Lachan Chol Mitzvos. Maybe the Tanaim really agree with Reish Lakish. Both of them hold Rebbe holds She holds the mitzvah of chinuch pushes away the concept that he can make his own nadarim or nazirus. The Rabbanan, the Rabbanan. One Rabbanan pushes away another Rabbanan, just like Esei Dochalose. Here, Esei Dochalose. Rabbi Yossi Yehuda, the Amar, Achegil and Nadarim, Kasar lo asi chinuch Rabbanan, dachi mufla samachlish. He just holds, happens to be the Rabbanan, doesn't push it away over here. Since the Rabbanan has the capability of making his own Adarim or Nazirah, so therefore the Rabbanan didn't give him the koach of chinuch on a child whom the Rabbanan already had the ability to make his own Adarim. Lei mahani tanai kahani tanai. Say the machlokas tanoim between Rebbe and Rabbi Yehuda is like another machlokas tanoim. The Sanya, Ma'aseh Rabbi Chanina shediru aviv ben Nazir. Rabbi Chanina I don't know if it's Shekhinah Mendoza or a different Rabbi Chanina. His father accepted Naziris for his son while he was a katan. They born from Gamliel. I heard Gamliel Bodko. Gamliel was checking him. Later, Hevi Shtei Saros, him low. Hevi. He wanted to see if the actual Naziris that the father accepted upon him was an actual Naziris or not, depending on whether he was 13 years old and had Shtei Saros. He was a gadol. Because if he was a gadol, his father can't do it anymore. Rabbi Yossi Amar Leida Im Higil on his Nadarim. No, he was checking him. He wasn't looking whether he had Shtei Saros. He was asking him. Right, he was 12 years old. He was asking him, "Do you know who you're making a daran? Do you know they're making a daran to Hashem?" Because that was the age of the cutoff point in love. Amar lo Rebbe altit star lebod keni. So Rabbi Chanina said back to Gamliel, "Don't even bother checking me. Either checking for the hairs, according to one version, or checking whether he knew he was making a daran to Hashem. Im katan ani, if I'm a katan, eyeh b'shul abba. Then either way, I'm going to be a nazir. If I'm a katan, if I haven't reached the requisite age, so then the years of my father takes effect. Im gadol ani, if I'm a gadol, if I'm already past the age, me. I'll take my own naziros. Practically, the simple explanation is, I'll take my own naziros now and accept it upon myself for myself. So either way, I'm a nazir. Amar Gamliel Menashkal Rosh. Gamliel heard this. He stood up and he kissed him on his head. Amar Muftach Ani Bazeh Shemor Allah Yisrael. He was very impressed. Rabbi Chanina. He said, someone who's so smart to figure out I'll be a nazir anyway. I guarantee he'll be someone that'll be a Rav, he'll paskin shilas in Yisrael. Amru loha yamim muatim ajahora horab Yisrael. It ended up being that very soon thereafter, Rabbi Chanina ended up being a rabbi and ended up paskin shilas in Klal Yisrael. So we're going to stop over here. The Gemara analyzes this brisa. The reason the Gemara introduced this brisa is to say, right, that the two opinions in this brisa. Right. The first opinion held that he was checking him to see if he was a gadol, Shtei Saros, held like Rebbe, who said that he could make him a Nazir until he's 13 years old and Shtei Saros. And Yossi Yehuda held like Rabbi Yossi in this price, who held that he was checking him to see if he could get Onis Darim, and once he gets Onis Darim, which is 12 years old, and he knows who he's making a Darim to, the father can no longer accept an Naziris upon himself. And the Gemara will analyze that, whether you can say the same Machlokes Tanaim as before is the Machlokes Tanaim over here. We're going to stop here because this discussion will go into the middle of the next daf. Hope you enjoyed today's share. Stay tuned for Iyun with Ben Sion. We're going to talk about this prospect of Katan Shagia L'Chinuch, right? You have a mitzvah to let him wear tefillin, to put on tzitzis, shake lulav. The Gemara in Sukkah says. What about averos, right? So the concept of a katan doing mitzvahs until he's bar mitzvahs, they're rabbanan. It's a machlokes Rashi and Tosim Sechas Brachos, whether the mitzvah is the father's mitzvah, they're rabbanan, or it's the mitzvah on the son, right? He has his own mitzvah, they're rabbanan, not midoraisa. And everyone agrees until he's bar mitzvah, you don't get mitzvah d'oraisa. However, it seems from our Gemara, I'm going to prove it more in Iyun Ben Sion, that midoraisa, he's mitzvah not to do losa say. Once he get l'chinuch, once he understands things, midoraisa, he can't do lavim, he can't violate the Torah. Doesn't have to do positive mitzvahs, but violating the Torah he's not allowed to do. I'll explain why this is true, where I know it from, and we'll talk about a famous Gemara in Sukkah, which seems to disagree with the Gemara, and Rakiva Yeir's question in Sukkah, and give an answer to it. All Iyun with Ben Sion coming up next.